This video does not contain any leaks, it's entirely based on officially released material. There are more than a few similarities between Nintendo and Studio Ghibli. Both are Japanese media powerhouses, whose works are titans in their fields, going on to inspire and guide those who follow them. From the very first reveal teaser, it was clear that Breath of the Wild leaned on Ghibli more than perhaps any other game in the series had before it. The clip of Link being chased by a guardian closely paralleling the beginning of Princess Mononoke, where the protagonist Ashitaka is chased by a demon. Link's new design, too, closely resembles Ashitaka, hooded with a blue tunic. Hyrule is populated by almost 1,000 tiny forest spirits, childlike creatures who make a distinct rattling sound, just like Mononoke's Kodama. There's even a mysterious animal spirit who watches over a mountain and protects its wildlife. Satori, the Lord of the Mountain, who bears a strong resemblance to Mononoke's forest spirit, both glowing an eerie blue-green at night. Thematically, both works focus on the relationship between nature and technology, and how hatred, or malice, will poison anything it can. But Breath of the Wild didn't just take from Princess Mononoke. We also see inspiration from Spirited Away and Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, the latter of which also takes place a long time after an apocalypse, with a world full of giant monsters whose blue eyes turn red when enraged. In fact, there are so many Ghibli connections in Breath of the Wild that I recommend you watch a video by the channel Beyond Ghibli, whose video, With Eyes Unclouded, dives into the parallels, both surface level and thematic, between the media. But it seems that Tears of the Kingdom is taking this a step further. The similarities between it and Princess Mononoke are more clear than ever, and the game also appears to draw heavily from other Ghibli films too, in particular Laputa, Castle in the Sky. But first, Mononoke. Here's Conrad from the Commonwealth Realm to explain.
Nintendo and Studio Ghibli are both absolutely massive exporters of Japanese culture. Their games and films respectively are among the highest grossing media Japan offers, and both are often heavily steeped in Japanese mythology, religion and literature. So when drawing parallels between the two, it's important to remember that both studios draw influence from the same culture. But it seems that with Breath of the Wild, Nintendo stepped it up, moving away from just exploring similar concepts to directly taking influence from Ghibli. The most obvious and most heavily discussed of Tears of the Kingdom's parallels with Ghibli is Link's right arm. We've already mentioned how Link's champion tunic and hood outfit closely matches the look of Ashitaka, but what we see happening to his arm in Tears of the Kingdom is downright exactly the same. Ashitaka's arm is damaged during his encounter with the demon Nago, in a scene we have already mentioned parallels to Breath of the Wild's reveal teaser. Nago is a boar infested by a terrible curse, manifested as dark purple-red worms covering his body. Ashitaka first tries talking the boar down, but it doesn't work, so he must try to stop it by force. He hits the boar once, but this only enrages it. It lashes out with the dark tendrils covering its body, which wrap themselves around Ashitaka's right arm. Though Ashitaka kills the boar, he is gravely injured by the fight. His arm is marked where the tendrils touched him, a dark scar that appears to be spreading. Ashitaka's curse, the riffing tendrils that consumed the boar after being shot, is hatred, a terrible force that takes hold of both sides of any conflict. The boar's curse came from an iron pellet, which when lodged in its flesh, shattered his bones, rotted his body, and turned him into a raging monster. It gives Ashitaka terrible strength. With it, he massacres soldiers and bends swords like they are made of rubber. By the end of the film, the forest spirit, a mysterious being who represents both life and death, appears to sacrifice itself to end the war, and with it, Ashitaka's curse seems to have healed.
Link's arm directly parallels this. He encounters Ganondorf, a being often depicted as a boar demon who lunges out with tendrils of malice, or hatred, which damage the Master Sword and burn Link's arm. In fact, the way Malice appears here is different to how it moved in Breath of the Wild. It's much closer to how it appeared in Mononoke, and the shots of the protagonists being damaged are almost exactly the same. Too similar for this to be anything but intentional. This encounter leaves Link with dark scars all up his right arm, just like Ashitaka's. However, unlike in the film, it seems Link's arm is healed, or altered, by strange blue-green magic. The same energy that appears to be connected to the Sky Islands and to the spectral hand that looked to be sealing Ganondorf in the first place. Like Ashitaka's arm, Link's arm grants him powerful new abilities, even though it doesn't appear to be because of malice, instead because of the green energy. Like in the massacre scene, when the arrows loosed by Ashitaka's right arm travel with pinpoint accuracy and to devastating effect, we see Link's right arm guide his arrows to their target, with a little help from what appears to be a Keese eyeball. I'd be surprised if this was the only time Link's new arm can help him in combat. In Breath of the Wild, we see Link with a new hairstyle, longer hair than his past incarnations, tied up into a top knot or ponytail at the back. Again, this is just like Ashitaka, who famously cuts off his top knot before leaving for the west to find a cure for his curse. We don't see Link cut his hair, like we see with Zelda in Tears of the Kingdom, but we do see him with a drastically different look right after his arm is damaged, while in his sky outfit, his hair hangs loose. Symbolically, Ashitaka cutting his top knot represents him abandoning his current life and status as a prince, instead choosing to meet his fate and seek a cure. Perhaps Link's new hairstyle means the same thing. His arm is damaged and he leaves his past identity as a champion and a chosen knight behind him to look for a cure. Nago isn't the source of Ashitaka's curse. The hate that consumed it is, just like how Ashitaka claims that a demon lives inside both Eboshi and San, who represent both sides of the film's central conflict. So it's possible that, like Nago, something could have driven Ganondorf into this state of torment and anguish. Mononoke's boar demon was tortured into its monstrous form by an iron bullet, and while we're not yet sure exactly what led to Ganondorf's apparent imprisonment underground, it doesn't look painless. In what looks like a literal flashback, he's bent backwards as the hand lunges towards him. And when he's discovered, he appears to be frozen in a state of perpetual agony. Though he does sound pretty set on burning Hyrule to the ground in the newest trailer.
Leave no survivors!
So maybe he'll be as angry as ever.
But as we mentioned at the beginning, Princess Mononoke isn't the only influence. Tears of the Kingdom's skies are filled with ancient floating islands, littered in stone ruins and trees. This is similar to another Ghibli classic, Castle in the Sky.
Not only does Tears of the Kingdom have a literal castle in the sky, the connections to Ghibli's first official film run deeper. The film tells the story of Laputa, a mythical kingdom floating above the clouds, which the film's protagonists eventually explore. The island is thought to be a myth, but Patsu's dad once managed to photograph it. Laputa is long deserted, littered with broken stone columns and buildings, overgrown with foliage and giant tree roots, home to birds, animals, and giant robots who were built to serve the kingdom's inhabitants. On the surface, the connections are obvious. Tears of the Kingdom also has floating islands covered in worn, crumbling stone structures, often overgrown with giant tree roots. They even seem to be home to giant automata too, perhaps also built to serve. And in the film, Laputa is obscured by an endless storm. Two winds blowing in opposite directions, forming a giant column of wind just like that which surrounds Hebra Peak in Tears of the Kingdom, obscuring the sky islands that hang above it. But let's literally go deeper. Near the beginning of Castle in the Sky, the two protagonists fall into a mine, which they explore by torchlight. Down there, they find glowing deposits of Etherium, a material that the people of Laputa once knew how to refine and process. Sheeta has a necklace of pure Ethereum, which allows her to float instead of fall, and it's this material that allowed Laputa to rise above the clouds. Mines full of glowing blue rocks obviously parallels Tears of the Kingdom, where Link and Zelda travel through cave systems filled with not just Zonai ruins, but what appear to be luminous stones, a material that glows blue-green at night, said to contain the souls of the dead. We don't just see these stones in the reveal teaser though, they're also seen in this shot of Link fighting a luminous stone talus, both on the monster itself and in the background. It was Ethereum that allowed Laputans to raise their kingdom into the heavens, and we see Tears of the Kingdom's Sky Islands closely connected to this same green-blue magic, powering these two golems, surrounding the rocks which might allow access to the islands, even in glowing areas on the very bottom of the spires underneath the islands. The Sky Islands also feature the same Mesoamerican-inspired architecture as the Zonai ruins found underground, so just like how Ethereum was mined and used to raise Laputa skyward, could luminous stones and the energy of spirits have been mined and harnessed by the Zonai to raise these islands? There's an eerie, ethereal atmosphere to Laputa in the film. The pair explore its abandoned halls, which are silent and peaceful, yet haunting. There's something unsettling about the disappearance of such a powerful, magical people, survived only by their crumbling architectural wonders. Perhaps Tears of the Kingdom will let us explore this environment, to travel through the castles and streets of a lost civilization. And I might be going crazy here, but there's also this little exchange between Dola and Sheeta, where they're trying to locate Laputa based on the pendant's beam of light. Sheeta notices that because it's closer to grass cutting season, the summer months, then the sun didn't rise from due east, but instead a little south of that. Which is, bizarrely, exactly what we see happening in Tears of the Kingdom. I'm certainly not the first to mention that the shadows are cast in a different direction compared to Breath of the Wild, because the sun rises from further in the south, which I'm sure isn't really a nod to Laputa, but it is a neat coincidence. In the film, Sheeta is revealed to be a princess, descended from ancient Laputan royalty. Her arc during Castle in the Sky is about giving up on this, her heritage. Together with Patsu, she uses a spell to destroy most of the Old Kingdom. Towards the end of the film, she even loses her pigtails. They're shot off by the villain Muska, again symbolizing a change of status, representing her losing her identity as a princess. The film's villain, Muska, has a similar role to Ganondorf in The Wind Waker. Like Sheeta, he is Laputan royalty, but unlike the princess, he can't let go. He wants to seize Laputa for himself and control its godlike power. Zelda obviously seems to mirror Sheeta. She, too, is a princess from an ancient royal line. Perhaps her story arc will involve letting Hyrule go, while Ganondorf remains hellbent on dominating it. In fact, Castle in the Sky begins with Sheeta falling, presumably to her death, before cutting to the opening credits. At the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom, shortly after discovering Ganondorf's body in the cave, it seems that Zelda will fall. The ground crumbles beneath her and Link fails to catch her. I've theorized before that Zelda could die in this moment, continuing her journey as a spirit or divine being. But it's also possible that Tears of the Kingdom will yet again parallel Ghibli here, and Zelda's fall will be broken in some way. Perhaps by the sacred powers in her blood, or maybe the same magic that elevates the Sky Islands, the luminous stones mined underground in an ancient time. But it could also be the case that Sheeta's Ethereum pendant, the one that contains the same magic as the Sky Islands, instead served as the inspiration for Link's new right hand. It glows the same blue-green colour as the luminous stones and the hand-sealing Ganondorf, and is connected to the Sky Islands in some way. It's used to jump great distances, to manipulate technology found on the islands, and even to reverse time for certain objects. Tears of the Kingdom looks like a melting pot of different influences, and the Studio Ghibli classics Princess Mononoke and Castle in the Sky seem to be among the greatest of them. With Link's new arm, the Zelda team are literally wearing their inspiration on their sleeve, a combination of the dark malice of Ashitaka's arm and the lost, ancient technology of Castle in the Sky. So, does Studio Ghibli help us predict Tears of the Kingdom's story? Not really. Just like how Princess Mononoke doesn't tell us the story of Breath of the Wild, despite the similarities, I doubt that Tears of the Kingdom will follow a similar narrative thread to any of the animated works. We don't know for certain why these skylands have appeared above Hyrule, why Ganondorf was found underground or what his plan is, but the influences are clear, primarily with the fate of Link's right arm and the existence of an ancient, skyfaring civilization, powered by a mysterious, glowing energy. We can draw thematic parallels, but we can't be sure of anything until the game releases this May.
But what actually is Ethereum? For a closer look at the cultural influences behind Tears of the Kingdom, including a deeper dive into the real inspirations behind the Zonai, check out my counterpart video on my channel.
Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a like or subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. What do you think about the connections between Tears of the Kingdom and Studio Ghibli films Princess Mononoke and Castle in the Sky? Let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to check out the counterpart video on Commonwealth Realms channel. A huge thank you as always to channel members, including Myth tier members Lily, ZeldaButaGrl, Pappy Chris, Rysskylt, Vampyfoot, Thomas Drury-Wang, Celestial Kitsune, Monkey Gamer Z Official, and Gerudo Eli. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.